All right, so I'm going to give you some adjustments today for dealing with a pattern that you need to make flatter in the back here. You may have a flat back, but maybe it's more that the pattern is just too rounded for your back and it's just kind of feeling baggy back here. This one has a little shoulder dart, but I'm going to show you how to deal with this if you do or don't have a shoulder dart. So we're going to look at this high back area here. Maybe we just need to pinch it out here. Maybe we need it down lower right here. And if your pattern has a center back fold, I can give you adjustments for that, a few different options. And if your pattern has a center back seam, I also have some options for you. So let's pinch out what we think we need. So if you think you need to pinch it out right here, you know, make your mark or pin it, maybe try it on. We're going to pinch it out at the fullest amount right there at the center back. So if we just wanted it there, say you wanted it to distribute it a little bit more evenly and you have something like a center back seam, you can spread this out so it's a little more subtle adjustment along the center back. Or maybe it's you don't have much, but it's all up here in this high back area. So what I'm looking at here is that the seams are all where they need to be, but I'm just noticing all this looseness up here. This one's very exaggerated, so you can see on this little form, sometimes it's hard to grab the amount. So you can tell that these seams are all, you know, where they need to be. The armhole and the neckline don't have seam allowance on it, but the shoulder and the side seam do. So we can see that maybe pinching out up here will work, maybe down here, maybe both. So choose where you want to pull it out. So the high back adjustment I'm going to show you on the fold is going to be located really high up, like right along this neck seam. So if you think that your adjustment's on the high side, I would go with the high back adjustment. If you're feeling like it's a little bit lower, maybe you know, you're feeling like the excess is right here at the center in the shoulder blade area, then maybe go with the low back. If you want both, then maybe go for the center back seam, or maybe you need both, then you can do both to the same pattern on the center back fold, or you can do the center back seam and do both as well, or one or the other. So there's a lot of options here in shaping this upper back. All right, so I've pinned out some that we'll try to adjust on the pattern now. All right, so we're going to deal with this high flat adjustment, and this one's for a pattern that's on the fold. So you need to maintain the center back as a straight line so you can still put it on the fold. And if you want to do this with a center back seam, we have a few more options, and I'll show you that in another tutorial. All right, so the first thing we need to do is draw a line, and where we need this to be located is right at this seam line here. So this is my seam allowance in red, and this is my seam line here in black. So we're gonna square across right at that neck there, and your line might land on the shoulder, it might land on the armhole, it doesn't matter. And it doesn't even really matter that it's a straight line. If you watch the Drafting Basics video, you'll understand why I say that. So I'm going to example that right here. So if you really want to ensure you're going to measure correctly without worry, you can kind of square out here for a little bit. And then I would just go around the dart. Just like that. It's going to be fine. So I'm going to leave the dart intact like that. We don't have to monkey around with it at all. So we're just going to be dealing with this little bit here. We're going to put that in the low flat back adjustment. If you could fit that all in there, go for it. I wouldn't adjust this amount more than like a ½ inch, 5/8 of an inch. That's kind of the limit of what you want to adjust here. If you need more than that, I would put some of it down here. So, all right, so now we're going to cut our line here. So we're going to create a hinge. So we're going to make the hinge right here, just like this. So we're going to cut up to this line and then on both sides of it. We're going to cut up to this line on both sides of it. And same here. So just going to go around and then cut up to this line as well. Doesn't really matter the angle. All right, and so we're going to measure our amount that we're getting rid of, right? And we're going to measure it right here at the center back fold. And we know we need to double that amount because it's folded. And we're going to draw that line on the center back right here, along it, going down. That's that whole amount, right from where you cut. So I'm gonna do it on both so you can see them both happening at the same time, right from that cut line. And now we're gonna lower the upper portion here to meet that line. So we're gonna take our little bit here and just overlap it. And then we're gonna secure it with a piece of tape. Now in some cases, your paper may stick up above your cut line here and you just need to trim that away. I thought mine would, but I guess it doesn't. All right, so same thing over here. Line up that cut right there on top. And our dart has stayed the same and we got rid of that amount. And I think you should always secure this with lots of tape just to make sure it doesn't come apart. And then this is all you need to do for this adjustment. This doesn't change any of your other lines like your neck or your shoulder, so everything should still sew to this, no problem, and you can keep this on the fold. All right, for a lower adjustment here, if we needed to remove some in this lower back region right here, I have two options for you. One will affect the shoulder and one's going to affect the neckline. So you just need to pick the one that you think is more suitable to your design or more suitable to the adjustment that you need. If you have collar pieces and facing pieces, you might want to opt for adjusting the shoulder since it's probably a little bit easier to deal with changing and making the shoulder fit the front shoulder again. But if you want to take out a little bit in the neck, then I would choose the neck option. All right, so let's measure down from the neck about where we need this adjustment. I'm going to measure to the base of this fold right there, this amount right there. We're going to measure there. And we'll pretend like this little pinched out there isn't there because we're going to do that in the high flat. So we've got that. So let's measure down. And I'm going to do both simultaneously. So we'll do the shoulder option on this one and the neck option on this one. So we'll mark down the amount that we want to take out. And now we're going to square across to the armhole from the center back. And we're going to put a hinge right here. Now for the shoulder, I'm going to fold this in half. You don't really have to position this where like a dart would be, but we'll just be consistent. And I'm going to draw my cut line like this, straight down to there. And this is going to be our second hinge right here. All right, and for the neck option, we're going to square across. This is going to be our hinge. And then from the neck, we're just going to kind of go right about in the middle here. We're staying away from those edges down to here, something like that. All right, so next we're going to measure our amount that we want to take out. We're going to measure right there in the center back fold, and we're going to double it. Mark our amount below this first cut line, that full amount that we want to remove. We'll do it on both here. Now remember, this is a change to keep your center back on the fold. If you have a center back seam, you don't have to do this extra cut line. And I have a tutorial dedicated just for that. All right, so we're going to do our first cut line to the armhole here. And we're going to cut up to the hinge. And then we're going to do our other one, and we're going to go straight down all the way through the seam allowance and to that little spot where the hinge is. All right, that's the shoulder option. That's the shoulder option. And now this one here, we're gonna cut up to the armhole and up to the hinge. And for the neck, we're gonna go straight from the neck to the shoulder area there, right there. All right, so now for the shoulder, oops, we lost our little hinge here. If you lose your hinge, that happens. It's very easy to do, especially with a rotary knife. So now we're going to make our adjustment. And this is kind of a 2 parts all at once kind of adjustment because we want to keep the center back on a straight line. So it helps if you have like a ruler you can butt this up against, or I'm going to use the grid here. We'll put this one out of the way a little bit here. And now we're going to line it up just like this. And if you want, you can even tape it down. I'm going to use some removable tape here. We'll do that. We'll tape this down just like this. And so now we're going to pick this up and we're going to pull this down here, but while we let this overlap by pulling it this way. And we're going to pull it this way because we want this line to be straight. All right, so we're straightening out this line so it stays parallel to the grid line here, but we're also pulling it down. So I'm going like this, like this. So I'm pulling it over and down. See, so here it is, up, over, down like this. Line it up, and we want that line to be nice and straight, just like this. And now we can secure it. And you can see we've made our shoulder a little bit of a divot right there, because that's where we got rid of and we shaped this area here. All right, so we just need to true up that shoulder line. And remember, it did get narrower. So if you need it to be the full width, we're gonna add it over here. And that's gonna be okay because we still took out this amount over here. So the neck, same exact thing. Let's put this again, we'll put this on, tape this to the center back line here. And again, we're gonna pull this down and then let the neck come over to the right here so that we can line up the back parallel there. You can see it pulls away a tiny little bit, that'll be okay. So we want it parallel, and then we want this to go to our line, just like that. And we'll secure it. You gotta secure it in both places. I would definitely secure it really well because the hinge is also kind of a fragile spot. All right, so for the neck here, you know, you can true this up a little bit. We have a little bit of a point. You can see it right there. So I'd probably put some paper there and smooth that out. For the shoulder here, I'm gonna add paper here and along the armhole, just like this. Now we're gonna redraw our shoulder line. So I'm gonna connect my seam line point to point right there, and then add back my seam allowance. So now it's straight. And now we need to add this amount that we overlapped right over here. So I would take your front and then line it up to your shoulder along the seam line. So I'm gonna fold back this so I can see there's my seam line, just like that. And here is my shoulder line there. So we're gonna come out just like that. And now we've put that back over here, and that means that our shoulder will still match when it sews to the front. Unless you needed to do the similar change to your front, or maybe the front shoulder needs to decrease, you're really gonna need to add that back so that your shoulders still match. All right, and then for the neckline, you're gonna need to change your collar to match this or any facings. So if you have some facings, you need to line it up to this edge, true it up, or redraw your facings. And then for any collars, you're gonna need to decrease the collar length between center back and shoulder. And I would take that out parallel right to center back. So let me show you how to do that really quick. All right, so here is your collar piece. It could be a Peter Pan style, it could be rounded, it doesn't really matter, but here's your neckline. And this little spot right here, that's the center back and it's on the fold. This right here is your shoulder seam. So this space right here between center back fold and your shoulder sews right here, center back fold to shoulder. So this little straight spot needs to go to this little curved spot. So it's no wonder that these are kind of hard to sew sometimes because it's straight going to a curve. So you really want to make sure you do this adjustment. So once you have finished this right here, you can measure this overlap amount that you took out, and you need to measure it along the seam line. More accurately, I would measure from center back to your shoulder and just see what that measurement is. Once you have that, we're gonna measure from the shoulder to the center back to reestablish the length here. Let's say we took out about this much right here. So this little amount here, this little wedge that we took out, measures that much right there on the neckline. That's exactly how much we need to take out on the fold. We're gonna do a parallel line straight up, just like that. And that's your new fold line. So make sure that you trim it off or scratch it out, so whatever you need to do. And now your collar is going to match and perform exactly the same way that it was intended. So just make sure you make that change, especially measuring and adjusting your pattern. Now, if you have a facing, you can redraw your facing, and that just takes a little piece of paper that you need that's about this big right here. So we're gonna trace our center back, fold here, straighter than I did there, put our neck, and then our shoulder just like that. Measure the width of your existing facing, and then you're gonna do the same thing. You're gonna measure that same width along this curved edge, just like this. You want a nice smooth transition, so lay your front facing up as if it's sewing. And then there is your new facing. It'll match perfect. And then let's compare this to our original here. And you can see we've decreased this amount right up here. We've pinched this out here, made this flatter, and we've decreased that volume right there while still maintaining our neckline seam, our armhole seam, and our center back fold, which is really important. All right, then let's compare our neck one here, like this. And same thing, you can see that we've pulled this out right here, we've pulled this down, and we've decreased that volume right there. We've maintained our shoulder seam and our armhole seam. You need to true this up a little bit. You can see we have a little bit of a point right here. And we can do that by either filling it in or taking it out. In this case, I would probably just trim this off and just smooth it out just like that. And get a nice smooth armhole. The armhole seam length hasn't changed right here. It's remained intact, so that's okay to trim that off. As long as we have our full seam allowance there, we're okay. So let's compare these two changes to one another and see how they look, because you can kind of tell they pull out the volume slightly differently. So let's line them all up along these edges. And so here's our neck. It's lining up with the exact same shoulder as the shoulder one here. You can see it pulled it down the exact same amount, but we maintained our shoulder length because it still kicked it toward the shoulder, towards the neck, since we decreased the volume at the neck. So you can tell if this change will act differently. So if you're feeling like I really just need the volume here, I don't really want to affect the neck, or maybe you have a wider neck, I would stick with the shoulder version. And if you feel like your neck is really small, or maybe you had extra volume there, or maybe the shoulder was feeling a little bit too far out anyway, I would go with this neck version. So we're going to make some flat back adjustments to a pattern that has a center back seam, or if you want to add a center back seam, we can do that too. So let's say you want to take out in a few different places along your back. You don't have to keep this high flat one right here at the neck seam anymore, because we don't need to keep this on the fold. So we can put this anywhere we want, and we can add as many as we want. So you need to figure out exactly how many you want and where you want them and how much you want to take out. We're just going to put a couple on this one. This pattern has a dart, so if you don't have a dart, you can just go straight across, but we're just going to make a cut line that goes from center back and around the dart, somewhere like that. And then we're going to add this other one. We're going to measure down where we really want this here, measure from the center back, and we'll square across. And we're going to make hinges here and here. Now, like I said, you can add a few here in this area. This is a pretty small pattern, so adding a few doesn't seem likely, but on a larger pattern, you might have more space there to add as many adjustment lines as you like. And we're simply going to cut our hinges going across. And this one here, we're just avoiding the dart there. That's why we did the squiggly line. I'm going to cut up to the hinge on this side. And now we need to measure our amounts that we want to take out. And we're going to draw on our center back line here, going down from each cut line, the amount that we want to take out. So we're going to take out this much on this one, and this much on this one here. And now we simply overlap them to get rid of it. So I'm going to start from the bottom line and work my way up. It's a little easier to manage. So we just need to overlap there. Doing a center back seam is so great. You have so many more options. Reinforce your hinges here. They really like to break apart. All right, so now we have this gentle curve here, so you can see it's not straight with the line on my mat anymore. So we're going to add a little scrap piece of paper back here to add our center back seam. The classic term for a center back seam with shaping is called a molded back. It really is a really nice way to get some shaping all along your back. All right, and now you can add the seam allowance that you want, or you add it back if you need to smooth it out a little bit. And make sure that you still have your center back here at a right angle, because these are seam junctures, just like you would do if your pattern was on the fold there. You need to have a nice smooth transition here and here. And now all you have to do is trim off this excess paper here. This won't change any of your other seams like your shoulder or neck, and you can use all of your existing pattern pieces. Sometimes your shaping right here up at the top might affect the way a facing lays underneath here. And if you have armhole facings, you might want to check that they're gonna fit here. So if you need to redraw those, you're gonna lay your paper underneath, and let's say we're doing a neck facing here. I'm gonna draw my line here. Now your neck facing can still be on the fold even if you have a center back seam, unless you're adding a zipper back here. And I'm going to add that right there, that line, but we need to take it off if we want this to be on the fold. So let's take off the seam allowance and make sure that that lines up with our center back. Right there, yep. And then this is going to be our fold. And then measure your facing and find out what the width is, and then we're going to reestablish that width along this edge here. So I'm measuring from the neck out. Get your front facing, line it up to the shoulder, and make sure you have a nice smooth transition right here. And right here you need a right angle right here. And now you have your new neck facing, just like this. I always try and make a squiggly line so I know that's on the fold. And you can do the same with your armhole, exact same steps, except that you need the seam allowance at the shoulder and the side seam in order to sew your facing to the front. All right, and then that's how you're going to add some shaping to your center back. And you can add many lines there or just a couple and place them wherever you like. I hope you're enjoying my Fitopedia fitting series, and if you want to get more fitting tutorials, just check the description. There's going to be links to more. And if you would like a printed version of these mini tutorials, just check the description or look under the video, and eventually you'll be able to make your own little Fitopedia booklet. And it'll be a really great, quick, easy reference to how to diagnose and fit the issue that you're working on. So I hope you're getting a lot out of the series. Please let me know, like, comment, and subscribe, and follow along for more. Thanks for watching.